Thank you for being here this evening. Welcome to Foltz Fine Art. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Sarah Foltz. I took over the gallery in 2018 from Bill Reeves, who founded William Reeves Fine Art in 2006 here in Houston with a mission to showcase Texas art and art history, which we are still doing today. And really honored to have all of you here today for two fantastic Photo Fest exhibitions that we are honored and privileged to know these incredible photographers and be a part of this. Tonight, we're focusing on James Evans's Big Bend, Now and Then. You're seeing color, panoramic photographs, more recent works on this side of the gallery, leading into an interior, really focusing on some of those early works from the original release of Big Bend Pictures. And in celebration of the 20th anniversary of that first book in edition, the re-release of the new book is going to be back here and available for you to have signed and inscribed by James. But as many of you know, James has been out in Big Bend country, living in Marathon, photographing that incredible part of the state for over the past 30 years, and really lives and breathes West Texas. The land, the people, the history, just really has become a part of that. And so we thought it fitting to have this exhibition coinciding with one of his mentors, or mentees actually, Sarah Wilson, who's an incredible filmmaker and photographer whose recent publication, Dig, is a tribute to her grandfather, who was started the paleontology department at UT Austin, and it really shows this incredible connection of family history and the land, and through her photographic practices. She's mentored with James in the 90s. And so, so it really kind of comes full circle to, telling different ways of looking at the similar landscapes, but having very different stories and connections that I think really provide different points of view and insight that are fantastic. I had the honor of meeting James my very first trip out to far West Texas about 20 years ago. And he signed my original copy of Big Bend Pictures, which is actually back there. And, I was actually studying photography at that time and had worked all summer to buy my first digital SLR camera. And James actually gave me a little bit of a hard time about shooting digital and, going from darkroom to that. But it happens, and then we all evolve. But really, this is such an honor to have you all here tonight. And without further ado, James Evans, everyone.
Well, thank you all for coming, and thank you, Sarah, for this. I haven't seen this much of my work all together in such a long time. It really feels great. And also, I want to say I have a few dignitaries here that I'd like to welcome. My friend Rick and Nancy Mullins, who traveled from Cedar Hill, Missouri, and I haven't seen them in 40 years. And they came to my show. So, and I photographed their wedding, and I wore a flash helmet. And if you look on that, that's what I was wearing when I took their pictures. So, it was an experimental stage. And then I like George Jackson, is a great photographer. I like to say that I'm glad that he's here. Sarah Wilson, I can't be. She's just great. And Dick DeGuerin, he's my best lawyer. I've murdered 7 people. He's got me off. And I keep him on retainer. So anyway, and of course my wife. This book wouldn't even happen if it wasn't for her. So she really cracks the whip on my ass a lot. So anyway, and it's great to be here with you, Sarah. It's just wonderful to have us together like this. So anyway, so this book was it's kind of a reprint of my first book, which was Big Bend Pictures, DJ Stout designed, and that was 20 years ago. And back then, I didn't really push back with DJ too much because I just wanted a book, And so when I look at it now, I think I ought to change that. I would change this. So I'm working on a retrospective book, and that's going to be. It's just a huge undertaking, and I didn't have a book. So Marcy said, "Well, why don't you reprint Big Ben pictures?" And I thought that's a great idea. So we redesigned it a bit. It's got about 11 new images, or changed out, or new images in it. We shortened it a little bit, made it 11 by 11 instead of 12 by 12. I took out DJ's big type, which he said that was the problem with that book. But and then the colors are a little different. It's richer, and none of the images are cropped. And that was the thing that now I wouldn't have cropped them like that. And then also the scans. We scanned from RC prints back then, but now I scanned the negatives myself and made my own digital prints. So they're richer. They have much more depth. So anyway, that's that book. And so I guess the best thing I can do, if you have questions, ask them, because that stops me from being nervous. And also, I can walk you around and just talk about some images. But I really encourage you to ask me questions, because I don't get to see you guys that much. So I really...
Which page is my picture on?
13. I moved to Marathon in 1988, and I'd come out there. It was my third trip out. I'd gone out with a guy. The third time I'd come out, we'd stopped at the Gage Hotel, and because the guy I was with, Cliff Ladd, knew the cook there. So we were talking with him, and I learned that they were looking for a cook. And I thought, well, shit, I can cook. And so I went to...
Sounds like an artist.
We went to the park, and I met Uncle Joe and Aunt Roberta. And Aunt Roberta was deaf, and Uncle Joe, he was quite a character. He said, she'll talk your arm off, because we used to write, to talk to her, I had to write it on the sales tickets. So Joe said, she'll talk your arm off. But anyway, seeing those people, meeting those people, I knew I was in love with Big Ben right from the first time. But the people, really, I thought that's what really captured me. And I think just with Uncle Joe and Aunt Roberta and John Suffolco, I just asked Cliff that when we came back up through the gate to stop at the gate, and I applied for the job. And Giddings Brown was the manager then. He hired me, and he asked me if I knew how to cook. And I said, no, but I know what tastes good. And he hired me anyway. So that's how I started. And then I found a building across the railroad tracks. I set it up, made it my darkroom, and I opened the gallery in 1989. And so, but the idea for me was it wasn't about I was trying to do a tourist book. That's what I'd seen out there. The books I'd seen were like these really heavy saturated color, and really for the tourist industry, I thought. But nobody photographed the people, and I thought that was my forte. I didn't know how to take a landscape picture, and so but I did know how to do portraits, and so that's what this book actually is, more portraiture than it is landscape, but it really shows the kind of person that lives here, and also I think I really I towed a fine line, because for me the book's about photography, but at the same time, in a sense, I'm promoting tourism, but it's not my intention. My intention was always about making good photographs, and I just happened to be in this beautiful space, or this beautiful landscape. But I don't really feel like I became a landscape photographer till about 2013. I think I finally figured it out, and even in the beginning, when I first moved there, I didn't take a picture for 6 months. I would just go hiking, and I'd just watch the light all day, and just watch what it did to the mountains, and and so I was kind of intimidated, to be honest. Like, how do you photograph this, you know? So, but now, like, I feel like I know those mountains so much that when I go to the park, I know that the way the lights are hitting the mountain, that's not normal. So I have that, and I have that advantage of waiting and having the time and really knowing the mountains and photographing them over and over and over again too. When I was young, I started out as a drag racing photography, and and in drag racing, every emotion is at a racetrack, but also, you know, timing, luck. There's so many other variables involved. But the other thing about that was there was the weekend warrior guys. There were the guys that had 9-to-5 jobs, and they worked and kept their hands clean, and, you know, raced on the weekend and was back to work at Monday morning at 9 o'clock. And then there was the guys that ate, slept, and breathed it, and that's all they did. And like John Force, and those were the guys that were just so steeped in it. And I think I took that lead from that to really steep myself into this Big Bend. And, you know, my photographs aren't just about landscapes. You know, like if there was a snake, we would photograph a snake, or whatever actually came in front of my camera that day, kind of thing. So that's all I have to say. You have any questions? Or can I show you? Can we start? Can I show you something? So look, I wanted to show. I'll show you this one first. So the big thrill of the evening was Danny Selft, who owned the Marathon Motel, was going to light the sign, and it was our first neon in Marathon. And so Evan Voiles was the guy that was going to do that, and that's his truck. So several of us went over there to watch the big thrill. And Monty Schatz was an artist that lived there, and so Monty said, "Let's make a picture." So what I did is I opened the shutter. First Monty laid down, and I opened the shutter. So this light is lighting Monty, and so this lightning bolt went off, and it kind of freaked Monty out, and he got up. And when he got up, this lightning bolt went off, and it ghosted him, and so it looks like he's actually leaving his body. It's all in the image, you know. It's like dumb luck, you know. But just so that's kind of a sweet photograph. It's not manipulated. And that's you know, I love that, just chance of with photographs. So that was kind of a good one. I also want to say that Jim Bones just recently passed away, and Jim Bones was a really great photographer. And the other thing I want to say about Jim was that when I moved to West Texas, I came with a guy named Alan Tennant and Cliff and Brenda. We had 3 truckloads of my equipment, and you know, I was scared to death what I was doing, really. And when I pulled up to the Gage Hotel, Jim Bones was in the lobby waiting for me, and he said, "Welcome to West Texas." Couldn't ask for a better thing than that. I mean, that was a good sign, you know, that this $4.25 an hour I was getting paid for cooking was going to be a tough gig. So where can we go next? Let's go in this room. So this is a good room to start. I think Dancing Feet and the bull steak on the sofa are my masterpieces. You know, they couldn't be more off the ground without being off the ground than that image. And I'll talk to you about both of them. And then the bull steak on the sofa. And when my landlady passed away, her name was Lucille French Clark. And the French Company Grocery, Marcy revived her name. But so that was Lucille. And when she passed away, I documented her house, like each room, as it was when she died. And that didn't move me at all. And so I found a tarantula, and I put it on the tablecloth and made that image. And I love that. So then, like, I got a critter for each room. And so the copperhead on the linoleum is part of that one, and the bull snake on the sofa, and this one here. Her family, she didn't have children, And so her children, her nieces inherited everything, but they didn't want anything because they were actually in their 50s and 60s and had their own lives, and so they really, I bought everything from Lucille, but the only thing they did was they took the photographs and they took them out of the frames, so they didn't even take it. That's all they took was the pictures themselves, and I had everything else. And so hey Ted. And so I was bringing in the critters and photographing them on the furniture. And this one here in particular, it's a rat snake, but he was really moving around a lot, and I could not get him to like sit still. So I put him in the freezer for a while. I thought, I'll slow his ass down, you know. But when I got him out, he was like this, you know. He's just like, because one part of him got really cold, but another part didn't. So he just looked mangled. And so I decided I really just needed to chase him and not really torment them. But
This on your lapel, and then people outside can hear you a little bit better.
oh, okay, it's a mic.
Yeah.
Who would have known it? Like, I need a mic?
Screw in your pocket.
And then and so okay. And so that's how this became a series. And this one here, really, the bull steak on the sofa, he really is just trying to get away from me. I teased him enough. He would jump out at the camera. I have pictures of him hissing at me, but eventually he just thought I was going to kill him. So and that made that shot. So, but yeah, and I kind of like people tell me, like art critics, which I don't understand them at all, but they would tell me like the furniture represents the old woman, and the lands and the snake represents like the reclaiming of something, you know, whatever. You know. And I'm thinking it didn't bite me, you know. That's all I was thinking. But I do like the pattern, you know. So and then here's another one since we're here, the Linnaeus Lorette. This image actually is in the El Paso Museum right now. And Linnaeus had lots of dogs. And he had asked me if I'd do a portrait with one of his oldest dogs, a dog named Lucy Parsons. And so sure, you know, of course. And we walked in the gate, and this dog is trying to bite me the whole time. And we made it into the house, and I made the portrait of Linnaeus and the dog. So on the way out, I said, Linnaeus, sit down. And all the dogs started to gather around him. And I'm looking through the viewfinder. I have used one of the stovepipe viewfinders. And I see the dog, he's coming at me. And so I snapped a shot and just put my foot up. But he's like in the air. He was really trying to bite me. It is. No, he didn't. Yeah. It's not.
Is his dog working?
Okay, we're all going to do karaoke. So the dancing feet one. Here's a really good thing to do. Like my best lens was in the shop, so I only had a wide angle and a short telephoto lens that day. And so this was they called this Good Neighbor Day, and people would come up from Mexico. It was at Rio Grande Village in the park, and they would have dances and celebrations and food. And the girl was bigger than the boy, but they were the same age, and at least I thought they were. And she pretty much was dragging them around the stage, and I just focused on their legs, and shot that image. But yeah, I do remember her name, but now I can't remember it right now. But anyway, I was running on all 8 cylinders that day. I 3 of the photographs that I made that day are in the book. So, can you hear it now? Should I just glue it on my glasses or something?
Yeah.
Right here.
Okay. And this is a guy named Dan Hickel. Dan, yeah, there's a song by Robert Earl Keen called Gringo Honeymoon. Actually, it's an album. So, Dan Hickel was, he's kind of a small-time drug dealer. Just marijuana, nothing big. But anyway, there was that law that the 3 strikes you're out kind of thing. So he had to serve time. That was the deal. So he hung out in Boquillas, and like he just stuck like a sore thumb. But anyway, he was really hiding, and he was in, and so I was taken to the secret place where he was, and I made this photograph of him, and he actually did the time, and it was not a big deal. And he's really a great guy, but that was kind of a funny moment. He was in hiding. This was still him in hiding. And then Judy Majors, they called her the Burrow Lady, and I really, you can't hear it? You do? Okay. So Judy, she used to just travel on that burro, and I would see her for years, and I would take a picture of her, and then I'd ask her if I could take her picture. And she'd say, no, thank you. And she was coming from Alpine to Marathon. So I would kind of drive ahead of her, and I'd shoot a few pictures of her, and then I'd drive ahead of her again and shoot a few pictures of her. And I just got out and I said, Judy, I've seen you for years and I would love to talk to you. I said, I hear so many stories. Would you come to my studio? And she did. But she never, I never got to like, what put you on the burro? Because it was just like, she really did it for years. And, she did answer in brief, like yes or no questions, because I heard like one of her kids committed suicide, and you hear all these stories. But she was real gentle. She never took a handout.
Keep talking.
She never took a handout from anybody, and so on the way out of town, I asked her if I could make her portrait, and she said yes. So that was the image I made of her. And when she died, there were probably 200 people at her funeral, and not because they knew her, but just because of what she represented. And she had 5 children, and they all came to the funeral, and they didn't know that she was the Burrow Lady, so it was really kind of a sweet thing. So,
How old was she when you interviewed her?
I don't know. No woman would tell you her age. I think Oscar Wilde said a woman that will tell you her age will tell you anything. So, yeah, I don't know.
What does that even
I don't know. Okay. Okay, so shall we go this way? The Dust Devil. It was I actually shot that in the old film days. I have color and black and white. Hasselblads have, you can change as many backs as you have. You can have different film and different types of color, black and white or whatever. And I actually jumped out and photographed this. And when I got the film back, I'd actually shot it on color film with a yellow filter for contrast. So I never could use it. But the digital age made it so I could actually print it. And then this is the drug blimp in Marfa that it surveils low-flying aircraft. But it's never caught anything, but it's there. I had some very good friends that passed away in the last year. My Ike and Sue and Sally Roberts. They're dear friends of mine. And Ike is in my book, and he's that image that's over there on the wall. That's Ike. And but Sally was Susan was his wife, and Susan raised this hawk as a fledgling, and she could call it up by putting a piece of meat on this fence post, and so it would come down and hit it and take off, and so the meat, that little piece of meat, is in its right talon, and it's just perfect, another dumb luck image, that kind of works out. To me, it's the best-selling photograph of all my photographs. When I was printing just in the darkroom, that was the one I've sold the most. And a guy named Tom Curry is an illustrator and an artist really good guy. And we were hiking together that day. And so when I set up the camera, I asked Tom to look through the viewfinder, and he said, "Shoot it, James." And so he really claims because he art directed it, that's why it sells so well. And by the way, I sawed that tree down after that because I didn't want anybody to copy my shot. Okay, I'm kidding. But I should have. This is a new image that's in the book, is Cattail Falls. I kind of like it because you can't tell what's going on. And this flag, one of the wonderful things about assignment work is going to and coming from an assignment. And so we were in New Mexico, I think, on an assignment, and I saw this hay bale on the way back, and we stopped and did this photograph. But it kind of reminded me of Jasper Johns, you know. I was really influenced by his work when I was a kid. So that was kind of fun. Okay, what else can I show you there? Let me see what's there. Let's move around.
Give me that.
Oh, thanks. This image here, and that image at the front, the Okatia, I call it Okatia 97. So when I go to the park, I carry a lighting equipment with me. It's ridiculous, actually. And but I was so uncomfortable not using a flash. You know, I'm very comfortable with lighting. And so to make this image, I set up the camera and I have a strobe. So photography works like this. If you take a light meter reading and it says 125 at f11, that's the existing light. So you pop the strobe, it says f11. So then you're just filling the light. You're just filling it, and you wouldn't see anything. But if you turn the shutter speed up to 250, then what you're doing is you're making the existing light slightly underexposed, and it makes the flash strobe doesn't change, just the existing light changes. So it makes the print jump off the page. And so you're actually separating your existing light from flashlight. And I did that with that one, and I did it with the Okatia 97. And it's not a technique I invented, it's just one I use. But it sure makes for a powerful photograph. So, and some are just, you know, existing light. I have to say, and I'm going to say this right now, I hope I don't embarrass you, Ted, but if it wasn't for Ted Miller, who gave me this really great job to photograph his ranch for a year, I spent a week, a month for a year on his ranch. And to be honest, it was land and sky. It wasn't like I had a whole bunch of mountains to play with or a bunch of distractions. So I really had to be creative. And that really, after I left Ted's ranch, there was nothing I couldn't photograph. And it was because of you, Ted. So I really appreciate that. And Susan, too, because she's the better half, actually. This is the same thing using strobes, of course. And so I would do, it's a cactus wren nest in a cane cholla plant. And again, using, dropping the background down. You actually do this just the opposite. When it's really dark, you can actually open up the shutter speed, so you're actually picking up the existing light. Otherwise, it would be really dark. But I don't want it to be too bright. I just want it to be enough. So this might have been like a half a second exposure. But otherwise, it would have been nighttime. You wouldn't have seen the skyline or the mountain in the background. So, and this is kind of a new shot, even though I shot it a while back. This is a brand new print for me of the South Rim. And then this one here, it was raining on us, and I just kind of again opened up the shutter and popped the strobe. And I love doing abstract things. There's a few here that Sarah hadn't put up, but I sent them to her. But there's some real oddballs. Hey babe, where's those pictures of the night work? It's that way. Let's go over there. This is the cover of my second book, Okatia crazy from the heat they call it. And I was trying to photograph in the worst light. You know, photographers always choose the best light to photograph in, but I thought, well, I want to start photographing the worst light of it and just photograph the heat. And so I did, that was one of the ones that was really successful. And my friend Pam Schoen, she's behind the tree, the Ocotillo over there, and because she hates her picture taken. And but when I was sending it in to the press, they called me and they said, you know, we think you spelled this incorrectly. It says Ocotillo panoramic, and I said, no, that's correct.
We did the same thing in-house. Every single one of my staff, we corrected it. And then I corrected it. Panoramic.
Hey James, are these cropped or stitched together?
They're stitched together. That is the one thing that the digital age really resolved, which was a wonderful thing. Like in the film days, 35 millimeter film, the panoramics you could buy, I think that Leica made one? Noblex made one? And I think that there was a 617, the Fuji 617, but that was a 10-inch negative, and I only had a 4x5 and larger, so either way I was out of luck with that format. But with digital, you shoot a piece, and then Photoshop will merge it, and then you can actually work on it. I was cold to the digital age there, I'll tell you, but the truth is that it's so much fun and so much. Ansel Adams would love the digital age, you know, but because you can really work on an image, you in the traditional darkroom you only have that time of exposure to do dodging or burning, and but with digital you can really take your time and work on the print, change it completely, go back to the next one, do it all over again. I really burned down the corners a lot on this because I wanted that kind of binocular look. I just, you know, you ever watch his shows on TV and the guy's looking, I just wanted that binocular look kind of thing, so that's why I did it that way. And then, so there's actually two series I'd like to talk about here with these images. So, and I guess it was in the mid-2000s I got to live on a ranch for a year. Susan Combs is a large property holder in the area, and I rented a house from her for a year. And so I had 2,000 acres of property, and I'd set up the cameras at night, and I started to do time exposures. And I was just experimenting. How it all came about is actually I pulled up to a ranch gate with my headlight just about dusk, and I just loved that image, and I made an image of it, and I thought, you know, there's something there, you know. And so I started to experiment. And so I'd open up the camera, and I'd paint the plant with paint it with a light. If that makes any sense, you have to imagine that it's pitch black. And so if I open the shutter and I paint it with a light, I'm essentially painting the negative. Actually, literally painting the negative. And so that's how. And then I would do a time exposure. So, and I would experiment with like focus, f-stops, changing film backs even. This image here, I opened the shutter and I painted this plant with a light, and then I walked over and painted this plant with a light, and I painted this plant with a light, and here's the light right here that's on my head, so I can see where I was walking, and here's the light itself, and then I closed the shutter. I took the camera to a completely different location, reopened the shutter, and did a time shot, and the landscape is from the second location. So, and then I had a show in Santa Fe, and there was a guy there, and he said, well, this is Orion, and he knew all the constellations by the star trails, but that's the only one I can remember. And then one more, this one here. So Marcy says that I'm a jumping bean when I go to sleep. So, and I move around, I keep her up. So I sleep on top of my truck. I have a camper shell, and I opened the shutter and I went to sleep. So every time I moved, it jiggled the camera. So it created my sleeping pattern through the stars. So it proved Marcy right for one thing, but it also it's biographical, you know, because they should look smooth, but because I'm a jumping bean. And then this is the last thing I'll talk about, the Santa Elena series. So, you know, the challenge for me is how do I photograph what everybody has photographed, but do it differently. And so I hired a guy, the boatman, Bobsky, to take me down the river, and I checked out the flow and what kind of pilot he was, or boatman he was, if you will. And then the next day, we went down again, and I took all my equipment. But I just laid in the raft of the boat as we went through the canyon, and I shot up. So I've made about 45 of these images, but it's just going through the canyon. So one side is the United States, one side is Mexico. And I was just lucky that there was no clouds. So you don't know if you're looking down or you're looking up. And it's just kind of a sweet series, but it's always been a challenge to how do I photograph the same thing and make it different. But so that's part of that. So that's all I got now.
James, I think we are actually running close on time.
Okay.
But everyone, James Evans will be here the rest of the evening. If you have questions, please come find him. We'll be signing books here for the next 30 minutes or so. Please be sure to go around and check out this incredible exhibition, as well as Sarah Wilson, who's over here.
Yes.
This incredible photographer. Be sure to check out her work.
Yeah. I love what Sarah's done. You know, Sarah introduced me to her grandfather, Jack Wilson, and I got to spend the last week with him on the last dig that he ever did. And he was digging up a 65-million-year-old crocodile. And to be around that, for me, it was just like amazing. And Jack, he was such a really sweet guy. And I asked him, I said, Jack, how do you know where to look? You know? And he's just like, well, you just look where you find them. I mean, he's pretty much wasn't giving up anything on that.
Just hand his pick to a random stranger basically that day. Remember? He
Yeah.
was done and he handed his pick over.
Yeah, he gave his pick hammer to one of his students.
Well, we salvaged it.
Oh, you
in
did?
Person's basement, and it's right there.
Oh, that's good to know. Yeah, seeing that, I think Jack was probably 85 years old.
Yeah.
And just digging in the dirt like a kid, him and Juan, it was kind of a wonderful thing to witness. And Sarah turned me on to Jack, so that was really good, and always appreciative of that. But, and I love what you've done. Okay, we're done.
Thank you, everyone.
Have you gone to the nightlife?
I wanted to show the night work.